right! That last video went over much better than I expected, so I guess I'm doing more of these. No problem, I'm sure Line 6 would love to pay me extra for the time I'm spending on this, in addition to the actual engineering and... Nah, okay. Let's talk about modern metal tone, specifically tight rhythm tone. As I mentioned in my last video, Helix's 3.0 update features a model of the Horizon device's precision drive, and a lot of players are finding that that's been the missing link in their sound. Now, part of that might be the gate that I talked about in that video, but that's obviously not the whole story, and this pedal is famous for instantly delivering tightness, so what's going on there? Well, to start off, the Horizon circuit is very similar to the classic Ibanez tube screamer. It can get brighter and more distorted, but at its core, the sound is pretty close. Case in point. The Tube Screamer has, for ages, been the go-to drive to tighten up basically any amp for high-gain playing. However, there's a trick to it, because you don't use it like a normal dirt box and distort your signal on the way into the amp. Instead, the usual settings are something like this, with drive all the way down and volume all the way up, or close to it. Why? Well, as it happens, the Tube Screamer circuit isn't entirely about distortion. In fact, there's some really heavy filtering going on here, resulting in a significant mid-bump and a really significant low cut. Let's take a listen to what it's actually doing to your signal. First, you're going to hear the guitar going straight through Helix with no processing, and then once again with just the Scream 808 model. There's a little drive there, sure, but hopefully you can hear just how much low end that took off. This, it turns out, is one of the most important aspects in getting a high gain tone to sound tight. Low end absolutely blows up distortion tones, and if you've ever felt like a tone sounds flubby or farty, there's a good chance it just had too much low end going into the distortion stages. Check this out. Okay, here's the guitar going straight into Helix's Badonk amp. Now here it is with about the same amount of low cut as a Tube Screamer. Now, here's that same low cut, but level boosted up to match the input. This has the effect of also pushing the mids and highs forward in addition to cutting some of the lows. And finally, here's the same tone, but instead of the low cut, it's the Tube Screamer, which will add a bit of a mid bump and some distortion. Now, there are plenty of applications for tones that don't utilize low cuts, and there are other ways to accomplish similar results, but generally, if you're playing fast riffs with lots of on-off palm mutes, or you're trying to, dare I say, gent, then you're probably going to want to keep those frequencies under control. Let's go back to where we started with the Horizon drive. Taking a look at the controls, we know what drive and level do, we know what the gate params do, the bright knob is analogous to the Tube Screamer's tone control, though with an extended range. What's the attack knob? Well, it turns out it controls a low cut. If you think of a standard high-pass filter, the attack knob controls the frequency at which the high pass starts. The higher you crank it, the less low end you're going to have. This particular low cut is implemented in the drive's feedback line, which probably doesn't mean anything to you if you haven't studied electrical engineering, but the upshot of it is that it'll actually affect the character of the distortion as well as the level coming out of the pedal. Take a listen to what it sounds like going through the different settings. Now, when I first did this, I was actually pretty surprised by how much level that took off. And I have things to say about that, but it'll have to wait for another video. In the meantime, take a listen to the differences between some of these settings with the levels matched. I think it's pretty obvious how much of an effect that low cut is having. This control is so essential that Horizon Devices spun this part of the circuit off into its own pedal called the Nano Attack, so that you could get this level of control with other distortions or just straight into the amp. This is something that guitarists like myself have been doing in the digital domain for ages because it's pretty effortless to throw low-cut EQ into the signal path. Given that the Nano Attack has a level control, it's not that far off from what I was doing when I boosted the level on the low-cut block earlier in this video. The point of this is that it opens up a world of tonal options, because all of a sudden, drives that weren't going to be useful for this type of tone before now suddenly are. One of my favorite distortions in Helix is the Minotaur, a model of a boutique Klon Centaur pedal, which has a signature spank to it, but lets through too much low end to be useful in a lot of fast modern contexts. But enter the low cut and... Screamer for comparison. The Tube Screamer certainly doesn't sound bad, but it's got a different character to it, and I like choices. And that's the glory of the humble low cut. If y'all want me to do more of these, then do the whole likey, subscribey, whatever business, and if you want, you can follow me on your social media of choice as @TheBishopGame. Till next time.